In this video, we're going to cover everything that you need to know about positioning and company research to find a job in the UK. Let's go. Welcome to the second part of this 8-part series around how to find a job in the UK. We provide simple, practical advice from an experienced career coach. If you love these videos, please don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and throw us a comment. And also share this video with anybody you know that could be struggling with some of the issues that we talk about in these videos. You can also download your free application help pack, which is in the description below. Inside you get 2 free ebooks which explain the UK's biggest tier 2 sponsors. I also go into great detail in an introduction to work in the UK, what you need to know about tier 2s, work permits, different types of visas, just a rough overview, because of course I am not a legal advocate, I'm not an immigration lawyer, just based upon the immigration regulations. I've also attached an application planner, an Excel application planner, which has got everything that you need to know. I've also put in 40 companies for you there. It's all formatted, it's got instructions, it's super helpful. So please go and check that out. Bye. I'm Mike, your host, and since 2013, I've coached over 200 international students into top tier jobs at companies like PwC and Goldman Sachs, and also I've spoken to over 25,000 international students, and this is my way of giving back to the community through my company, Job Ready English. Did you finish your homework from part 1? If not, then go and do it now. Okay, then you would have checked out those industries that we threw up in part 1. If not, go back and have a watch of that video. And also you would have got a decent idea of your level of English based upon the test that we laid out, and maybe laid out a plan of action to improve your English, or not, if your English is already awesome. Today we're going to be talking about positioning and research. We welcome back Lynn, who's our master's student that we came across in part 1. And basically, so Lynn's got a rough idea about what she has to do and what the process is, but now she's thinking, well, what companies should I apply to? And she's starting to do her homework. A quick recap of part 1, common positioning problems, why you need to have 2 lists of companies to apply to, job sites to use and others to avoid, how to use Google Alerts and agents to help you. Part 1 recap. In part 1 we covered planning and goal setting and learned any bachelor's degree, as long as your grade is a 2-1 or above, a 60%, means that you're eligible to do most graduate jobs unless they're highly taxed. Your university that you went to doesn't matter, and your master's grade does not matter either. Don't limit yourself like Lynn and apply only for jobs that are related to the degree that you're studying. You should start applying as soon as possible, and in our experience working with clients, it takes an international student roughly 4 to 6 months to find a graduate job. Finding a graduate job in the UK is hard. Roughly about 1 in 100 international students will stay and work. Your English should be good enough to communicate your feelings and ideas. If you're shy, work your way up slowly by firstly practicing by yourself, then finding a language partner online before you transition to practicing with somebody in real life. So let's talk about 4 common positioning problems. Problem number 1, having ridiculously high standards. Now, I often come across this problem, particularly when I speak to students at G5 universities, Oxford, Cambridge, Imperial, UCL and LSE. So they'll say to me, I only want to work for Bain, or I only want to work for Goldman Sachs or for Morgan Stanley or McKinsey. Now, there's nothing wrong with having high standards, but if these are the only companies that you're going to apply to, then realistically you're setting yourself up for failure. Now, the opposite of this is problem number 2, which is having no confidence at all. A more common problem from students who say, for example, particularly if you went to a lesser well-known university or you studied a more obscure subject, they'll say, how could I ever work for EY, or how could I ever work for Barclays? I could never work for these companies, they're too good for me. Don't underestimate yourself, your abilities, and also your ability to improve and the steps that you've had to overcome just to be an international student in this UK. I would argue just by being here, you are the cream of the crop, and you definitely could do those jobs as long as you meet the eligibility requirement. Problem number 3 is kind of similar to problem number 1, and also something that we spoke about with Lynn. So Lynn was our master's student studying marketing who said, oh, but I can only apply for marketing jobs or these particular type of jobs. So this is all about limiting your choices. What I would say to you is you already know that finding a tier 2 job in the UK is really difficult. It's about 1 in 100. Actually, if we look at the entry statistics from the UK Home Office, you'll see on this chart that it's roughly about between 2 to 3% of students who go on to convert from a tier 2 to a tier 4, based upon the number of students coming into the country and the number of students converting from a tier 4 to a tier 2 visa. If any of this talk of visas is confusing, then make sure you download our free application pack, which is down in the description below. Problem number 4 is waiting to apply for certain roles. Something else that will happen is that students will say, well, I can't apply for any jobs because the jobs that I want to apply for aren't yet open. Now, most large companies will open in August and September. Now, that's only 2 months out of 12 months. But what if you're applying for jobs in November? Well, the truth is you apply for whatever's going, and we're going to talk about this a bit later on in the video. But one thing you don't want to do is spend much of your time waiting for stuff to happen. We're going to come back to this point in other videos where a lot of times when I've spoken to students, I say, I'm waiting for this, or I haven't applied to this person because I'm waiting for this company to get back to me. What's really important is that you keep the momentum going. You should always be applying for the next job, the next role, and you should only really stop once you've got a job and you've got the contract and you've got the visa. Then you can kind of go, whew. Why you need to have 2 lists of companies to apply to. So let's think back again to Lynn. So Lynn's doing her marketing degree, and understandably, like any other students, you'd say, listen Mike, I've just spent 4 years studying maths, studying history, studying fine arts or French, whatever it is that you're studying. Why the hell would I apply for a job, something completely unrelated to my degree? If you're not sure about this, then maybe you need to go back and watch my first video when I try to explain the difference between what you want to do and what there is. And this is exactly what I mean by making 2 lists of companies. So if you haven't, make sure you download the application form help pack, and you can have my application Excel sheet in front of you and writing in those companies. Now I've already pre-populated that sheet with 40 companies that you could apply to. These are some of the biggest tier 2 sponsors. Now these might not be companies that you naturally thought you'd be suited to, but they're the companies with the most number of jobs. So basically we're playing a number. So what are the 2 lists? Well, list number 1 is the jobs I want to do. These are the jobs that I think would make me super happy. So maybe I particularly just want to be a graphics designer, or I want to work in digital marketing. That's great, you should totally apply for those jobs. I also argue that you should have a second list of companies. That list of companies are the most popular employers. Now, I'll provide you with a number of examples here. Also, we work from the Times Top 100 list, which is a really good place to start. And we're going to put that link in the description below so you can go and look for yourself. So for example, if we're talking about the biggest industries and biggest employers with the most jobs, we could have accounting and professional services, PwC, Deloitte, EY, KPMG, Accenture, BDO, Grant Thornton, RSM Tennant, banking and finance, HSBC, Bloomberg, JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, RBS and Lloyds, engineering and industrial, Atkins, Rolls-Royce, Mott McDonald, Network Rail, AECOM, IT and telecommunications, BT, Google, Microsoft, Facebook, and a number of companies from the Silicon Roundabout, which is our version of Silicon Valley, which is based in London. So that's about 23 or 24 different options. Now you might say, well, how can I go and do marketing at those companies? These are massive multinational corporations, so they're going to have departments which are relevant to your degree. And if not, just apply for something where you have the greatest chance of success. Again, I return to this really important idea. There must be a difference between what you want to do and what there is. If you just stick to what you want to do, you may be disappointed because there may not be the availability, particularly if there are fewer jobs or there is economic uncertainty. So let's talk about job sites to use and others to avoid. Job sites are a great source of information, and one of the biggest problems that you have as an international student is just finding vacancies which are relevant to you. Now, first of all, the job sites to avoid. Now, this might be a controversial point. If you disagree, please write up a comments in the description. Personally, I always tell my clients and students to avoid big job sites like Indeed, Monster, Total Jobs. Why? First of all, they don't really cater towards people who need visas. Secondly, you're competing with everybody. So you're competing with natives, EU nationals, as well as everybody else. And a lot of times the easiest way to do something is not the best way. I've lost count of the number of students I've spoken to who said, I've applied for 50 jobs a day for Indeed using one-click apply. The truth is, if it's really easy to do, the employer is going to be much less likely to sit there and look at each of those applications. Instead, personally, I would argue that you should use sites which are tailored towards people who need working visas. There are a couple of really great sites out there, and you're so lucky, particularly over the past couple of years. A few really good sites have developed. My number one choice for 2020 would still have to be Student Circus. There's also a really great new site out there called UK Hired. I think that's a really nice site. It's a really clean design. And lastly, I would use Target Jobs. If you're unsure about any of these sites, I'm going to stick them in the description below. I'm also going to stick a link to the video where I reviewed the 3 best job search sites for international students. Finally, I'd say it's really useful to use both Google Alerts and also job agencies to help you keep up to date with vacancies. So Google Alerts is absolutely awesome. I use it myself. What I'd say to you is you can type in graduate job, UK graduate, into the Google Search Console, and then you can actually register for an alert at the bottom. Also, for those of you who use WeChat, you'll probably be really familiar with Chinese coaching agencies, Chinese job agencies, some of which I would say are of a questionable quality. However, one thing I would say they're super good at is finding vacancies, because it's a sales tactic for them. Basically, they're like, look at all these vacancies we found, we can help you get this job. Whether they can or they can't depends upon the company itself. But signing up to these agencies, particularly if you're Chinese, is a really good way to keep on top of new vacancies. Because what I would say is that you want to make sure that you're applying to the most recent vacancies. So you want to have a regular pipeline of vacancies that you're building yourself. What we do for our own clients is that we research new vacancies every week, because of course, the newer the vacancy, the more likely it is that they're going to employ you and that there have been less applications. LinkedIn is also really good for this. You can sign up and get alerts through LinkedIn. Get organized and get started. So what I'd say to you is your homework for this session is make sure you download the application pack in the description. You can get that Excel form up and running. And apart from those 40 companies, why don't you start a new list, new tab, and write in 20 new companies that you want to apply to. So that can be your job and you're ready to go. If you've got your CV, start applying straight away. So don't wait. A lot of the problems I tend to find, like I said before, is about procrastination, waiting, what about this, what about that? Just go. If you fail, you fail, but failure is feedback. It is not the end at all. Finally, if the job market's quiet and you say, well, look, Mike, there's actually not that many vacancies, I put a link to my Networking 2020 strategy in the description, which a talk that I gave to the London College of Fashion. I've had really positive feedback from students who've gone on and actually got interviews and got job opportunities through following that strategy. And I will see you in part 3, where I'm going to do a walkthrough and a step-by-step writing of a CV that anybody can follow, so you can make sure that your CV is of a professional standard and ready to be put in with your application forms. Thanks guys, bye.